Dabba Dolly was a phrase that I started saying on stage, just as a little like gimmick after I would cover a Dolly song.
Mm-hmm.
I would finish the cover and people would clap, and then I would go, "Oh yeah, there's a Dabba Dolly for you," almost like a little dollop of Daisy, like that old U.S. commercial for the Daisy brand of sour cream. They'd be like a dollop of Daisy, and they had their own little song to it, and I think that's kind of where it stemmed from. That's how I started saying it. And it was Kirstie on stage with me. We were up in my home state of Wisconsin doing a little run, a tour run together. And she was like, wait a second, like write that down. Like, let's write that song. And so 2 days later we just wrote the song, and it came out very quickly, obviously, because it's about Dolly. So
yeah,
like
a lot of stuff to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was very, the careful part, I was very careful about, I was very nervous. I was probably the most nervous going in the studio. The day before, I was calling a producer, and I was, he's recently won a Grammy for Lainey Wilson's record and works on a lot of the BMG artists and label artists. But so he's very credible, right? And I'm still calling him like super nervous, like being like, did we talk enough about how I want the song to be? Like, do you have the essence? Do you have like just kind of having that nervous phone call? And he's like, I got you. We've talked about it. Like it's
little Dabba Dolly is good for everyone. When this world's waiting on me, I put her records on and turn up the queen of country. Yeah, she gets me in every song. Little Dabba Dolly is good for everyone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Living in the Limelight. I'm your host, Jay Huller. As a quick reminder, please follow us on Instagram at Living in the Limelight Show, and check out our website at livinginthelimelight.com. And of course, you can find our podcasts through all the major streaming services, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Check us out also on YouTube at Living in the Limelight Podcast. Each week, we feature a conversation with a different artist where we delve into what makes them tick, and sometimes we get pro tips on pursuing a career as an artist. If you are a performer or know someone who is and would like to be considered for our show, check out the questionnaire at livinginthelimelight.com, and thanks so much for listening. Kirstie Kraus is right where she needs to be. She's a Nashville-based standout artist with a heart of gold and a creative mind focused on her art. Currently, Kirstie Kraus is recording new music side by side with Grammy-winning BMG Studio A and Dolby Atmos immersive audio producer Jeff Huskins at Soundstage Studios in Nashville, and has already dropped her 2 March singles, Beaches Be Crazy, and her anthemic female duet, Dabba Dolly, which found its way to BBC Breakfast, WSM, and hopefully in the hands of the Queen of Country herself, Dolly Parton. I had the honor of speaking with Kirstie for a second time as my first repeat guest while she was touring over in the UK. So let's catch up with Kirstie on Living in the Limelight.
Hello.
Hello, Kirstie. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh,
is the connection okay on your end, even though I'm on the other side of the world?
It sounds crystal clear as if you were next door, so I'm extremely impressed on both of our ends.
Good. Well, I am in a nice, awesome home that has good internet, so that's helpful too.
That's great. Yeah, and let's go right into that because this is fantastic news for you. How long have you been in the UK for your tour recently?
It's been 3 weeks so far, 3 weeks and a little bit of change. And so I have just under 2 weeks left.
Oh my goodness. And how did that come about? Was that an idea that you just like, I've got to do this, or were certain things coming into place? How did it come to fruition?
Yeah, this is something that I put out probably a long time ago. I really look up to a couple artists named Cam, and that's in country music, and Sarah Darling, and they have always made trips over here. They come in and they play these theaters, and they do very well with fans over here in the UK. And I just kind of put it out there that is totally something I would love to do. I always said I want music to be the reason why I am able to travel. And so I feel like I'm living out my little girl dream.
Oh, I'm sure it's actually just the beginning because you have many more continents to visit and spread your
That's
music
right.
to. And this always gets me when because, and maybe I'm just naive, but the country music scene in the UK in general, is it emerging? How would you classify it? Like just exploding,
Yeah.
maybe?
Explosive, emerging, all of these descriptions are definitely happening. There's more and more brands popping up supporting country music over here. There is festivals popping up left and right, not just in the UK, but like Germany and Denmark and Scotland. So it is a whole movement that is definitely happening and becoming more of a popularized genre over here. I mean, you have artists like Carly Pierce and Morgan Wallen who have to extend their dates or get bigger venues. So the demand is happening, and it is definitely growing immensely.
And now that you're embedded in it, I'm imagining you've got a little bit of a perspective on like the groundworks behind it. Why do you think that it's happening in those countries now? And what can you as an artist and your fellow artists do to kind of keep that wave going?
Yeah, I mean, if I really had to get into it, I mean, their main festival over here is called C2C, which is short for Country to Country. It started in 2013. So, why wasn't it growing as fast then? If I really had to get into it, I think the country music genre as a whole has become a lot more inclusive for everybody. And also it's opened up just in the States alone to be pop country, R&B country, and then there's rock country. So there's a lot of different elements. There's kind of like that dark Americana country. There's just so many different elements that are still being supported and played on the radio. And they're all in the same genre. So it's kind of like there was this movement of country music being the popularized genre where there's a lot of subcategories of it now.
So you feel like as the general genre of country expands and grabs with different tentacles, it is inevitably going to just take over the world in essence and go and explode in all these places. And you can plug in different ways and be a part of that pretty easily, you think, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited about the genre being that expansive because I can still be able to just grow as an artist and express myself in ways that maybe I'm not even imagining right now. And also, the fact that I was on BBC One, which is their main radio station, and they're supporting conversations around country music right after their big festival C2C, right in the midst of Beyonce releasing a country album. They've been really hitting that for the last couple of weeks. So it's good timing that I'm over here just to talk about this subject of country music. And that's a big deal for BBC to get behind it because typically in the UK it was only like BBC Two and other radio stations that were behind country music. So there is definitely something happening over here.
Interesting. Yeah, and I'm glad you jumped to that because I was going to talk to you about it a little bit since you were, I guess, an excellent representative to field the question because with the Atmos podcast that you are on, and we'll talk about that too. But you have reach with a lot of different people, and you are essentially could be a great spokesperson for country music in general. You live in Nashville, and so here you are in that seat, right, the hot seat, and that question comes up, and I thought you handled it wonderfully. But what do you feel is going to – do you think other mainstream artists like that, R&B and pop, are going to come in from the other side into country versus – country music spanning out to them, or is it just kind of a two-way street and music is music?
I really do think it's a two-way street. I think a lot of artists have gone, from country to another genre, and now it's happening where it's the other way around. There's talk maybe Lana Del Rey might be doing something, and I don't know for sure, but I appreciate you saying that. I, qualified to go and sit, and that I did a good job there because I really wanted to. I think it was a very important moment to be representing country music. And so I was I was like, this is exciting, but I want to make sure I do a good job. And they definitely vetted me a ton before even going out to deciding that they were going to actually bring me out and be a part of the story. So I definitely appreciated that they were very careful on who they had to come out and sit in that chair. And I obviously was honored to be able to do so.
Oh, that's really cool. What, just for other artists who are like wanting to be in your shoes and move in that direction, and you said that you were vetted a little bit, without maybe going into too many details that you can't say, but what were the things that they look at from an artist to qualify you to answer the questions, sit in that chair, to represent all of that? What did they look for you to do?
Definitely the main question was like, how long have you been an artist and doing country music? How long have you been listening to country music? Like, how versed are you in this genre? Just questions like that. I think people that maybe just starting out in the genre might know some of the names. Over here, it seems like a lot of the country music fans are starting to learn more of the names in the industry, but mainly, for a while it was just Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, like the big ones. But now they're starting to learn more and more names, and there's fans taking note of other people in the genres that are up and coming, or maybe old to us, but new to them,
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, you've mentioned Dolly a couple times. Let's go right into Dabba Dolly, because that is so fresh. I mean, Friday was the release date. So let's talk about everything about that. How did it start? How's it going now? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, we are so close after the release, and it has been wild to release a song while on a 5-week tour in the UK with another artist. Being a duet with another artist that is now, because the time zone just changed yesterday again in the UK. We are 8-hour difference?
Yeah, I think so.
We are like an 8-hour difference between the two of us. So it's just been really wild to kind of, what an undertaking in general. But Dabba Dolly it's just such a positive, like, female empowerment anthem to celebrate the queen of country, Dolly Parton. And I really was particular on how I wanted the song to sound and how I wanted to represent country music and just represent Dolly as a whole. So we kind of went vintage with it as far as the country sound, and made sure that the banjo was in there, and made sure that it just was a really positive sound that kind of was inspired by 9 to 5 and Two Doors Down, like some of her anthemic hits that make people feel really good and positive.
Yeah, I love the touches of those songs that are just kind of sprinkled in. And one of the things that runs through my mind when I hear it is, when you're planning these things, first of all, is it daunting is the word that comes to mind? Is it like overwhelming almost to go, okay, this is going to be about an icon. This is going to be about the queen of country music. Our steps have to be very careful. So first, in the planning of it, was it very methodical, or did you just kind of, was it a writing session? You threw the stuff together and then saw how it went?
I mean, the writing session, I definitely wouldn't say methodical. It was definitely just kind of fell out, like, very quickly. Dabba Dolly was a phrase that I started saying on stage, just as a little, like, gimmick after I would cover a Dolly song. I would finish the cover and people would clap, and then I would go, oh yeah, there's a Dabba Dolly for you. Almost like a little dollop of Daisy, like that old U.S. commercial for the Daisy brand of sour cream. They'd be like, a dollop of Daisy, and they had their own little song to it. And I think that's kind of where it stemmed from. That's how I started saying it. And it was Kirstie on stage with me. We were up in my home state of Wisconsin doing a tour run together. And she was like, wait a second, like, write that down. Like, let's write that song. And so 2 days later we just wrote the song, and it came out very quickly, obviously, because it's about Dolly. So
yeah, like, it was of stuff to say. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was very, the careful part, I was very careful about I was very nervous. I was probably the most nervous going in the studio. The day before, you know, I was calling a producer, and I was, he's recently won a Grammy for Lainey Wilson's record, and works on a lot of the BMG artists and label artists. But so he's very credible, right? And I'm still calling him like super nervous, like being like, did we talk enough about how I want the song to be? Like, do you have the essence? Do you have like just kind of having that nervous phone call? And he's like, I got you. We've talked about it. Like it's all charted. Everything's good. And I don't think I've ever quite made a phone call like that. So I think I was a little more nervous this go around, just knowing I had such a clear picture in my mind, what I wanted this song to sound like, but not down to every detail. But I knew like the essence of how I wanted people to feel when they listened to it. So I was like, we have to capture this.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you think maybe in essence, if you compare this one to any of your other songs, was it before you stepped into the studio to record, was it planned extra and orchestrated extra, or medium, or maybe like you left a little bit for surprise?
I'm definitely not an artist that leaves a whole lot for surprise. I have my hands kind of like in everything, kind of like from an executive producer standpoint.
Okay.
So we talked about who was going to be on each. We talked about instruments. Then we talked about who specifically needed to be on each instrument. So we were very methodical about like, let's, you know, get Joe Roach to be on, you know, acoustic. We need him on acoustic and banjo, and that's the guy. And so we definitely got into, you know, major detail, and I was giving them examples of songs. I was very adamant about making sure we had that little lick in there, going right into verse 2. And I remember, and even in the studio, they were like, that 9 to 5 lick, do you want it at the end too, or do you want to hear? And I was like, no, it has to be here. And then I don't think we don't need it quite that predominant in that other part. So we get really into conversations about like what I'm aiming for the final product.
Yeah, that's what's so curious to me, because most of us have no idea. We know you go into these rooms and you get the headphones on, and there's a lot of back and forth, and all we get to see is the behind the scenes when they're shown to us gracefully, and that's it. So thank you for walking through that, because I know after talking with you and others, it is a huge process. And then the birth of the song, the launching of the song is like, oh, what's gonna happen?
Right. And that's a whole nother process. I mean, we were very hopeful. This is by far, I'm just going to outright say it, like the most straight down the middle country song, not a country song with other flavors. Like this is straight down the middle country song. I've never released a song this quite packaged as straight country. So I was very excited for that aspect, and obviously a little like, okay, like don't get my hopes up, but like, are we going to make a Spotify editorial playlist? Like, is that going to happen for us this time? You know, like, and thankfully we did, and we're really in hopes of maybe some more, but we made the new country music, or New Music Friday for country on Spotify. So we were really happy with that, and the streams have been going great, and so many brands have stepped up to help us in celebrating this, including yourself, Jay. So thank you so much.
Course,
and so far it's been going good. Yeah.
That is so cool. And that kind of begs a question for me, because I've always wondered about it, but pre-saving, can you walk us through on the artist perspective what that does? Because I see a lot of artists not pleading for it, but you know, it would really help. And then there's that, I've never seen an explanation of what happens within, because I know the editorial playlists, like you mentioned, are great, because that gives it a little more notoriety and play. But the pre-saves on a fan side, what are we doing for you guys when we do that?
Yeah, I mean, the pre-saves are for the general basis. Like for one, is just making sure that when the song comes out, it is coming to your release radar playlist. It is coming to you, like you're getting notified via Spotify or Apple Music that this is the new song that's out, that you've chosen to be notified by when it does come out. So it's just another layer of like, make sure you listen to the song. It also helps, I think, with Spotify as they take in consideration, like, should this song be on these playlists? It's like, okay, well, what are the demands happening right now for this song? So it just helps an artist give a little bit of leg up to maybe be chosen for a special playlist. So it's mainly those things.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I imagine that the people who handle those playlists have access to those metrics and kind of can see.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Good.
They can see where people are listening, what cities, just like we can see the back end of Spotify. It tells me my top cities, my demographics, what playlists my songs or any of my songs that I've released are added on, how many listens to that song on that playlist. So it's pretty cool what they are capable of showing us these days.
Yeah, that's the cool side. I know that maybe the uncool side at the moment is the compensation is not nearly where it needs to be, but there are some pros that give you looks into your audience, maybe more than you would have normally. So
yeah.
I appreciate that. Speaking of Dabba Dolly, while we kind of finish that up, the Instagram series that you guys did along the way, what was that planned alongside to bring it up to the release, or was that just something that you guys, was that part of when you were writing the song? Where did it kind of fall? Because I saw several of those come out and they were so cute.
Yes, thank you. We have more really funny ones.
Oh, good.
I'll say it right here, but we have the Dolly Mandments coming. So instead of the 10 Commandments, we do the Dolly Mandments, and it's so much fun. It definitely made us laugh. We had a whole day and a half's worth of filming all those, and that was really planned around when we were putting all of the ducks in the water, like figuring out all of our marketing plan around the single. And it was actually my good friend Crystal King, who you've had
I know Crystal,
specifically. Yeah, she bought me a book and helped in celebration of our future release. And it's a Dolly book based on fans wrote it. And in that book had a bunch of quotes.
Okay. Yeah.
These Dolly quotes. And so I got really inspired and I was like, Kirstie, what if we just read some of these quotes with this book and just helped, celebrate and be like, there's their Dabba Dolly for a day with a quote. And she's like, I love that idea. Let's do it. So it was another way to start the era, promote the song without just singing the song so much in advance,
Yeah. No, and it's a different way to do it too. Some artists will be, I think of, just several that come to mind. Then, they'll just do a little bit of the song, or they'll talk about the song in general. But this is a way of kind of talking about the song without talking about the song, if you follow me.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Now, I did see something about Dolly was close. She was in the same building that you were in at some point. I don't know if it was during recording, but let's fantasize a little bit here and say, okay, this does reach her, because it with enough traction here, it very possibly will. What could you envision? What would be the ultimate, the pinnacle of getting this song into her eyes and her ears, and something on a stage? This has got to be on a stage.
Oh my gosh,
happening, yeah.
Yes,
with you three.
I have envisioned the pinnacle being we are on the Opry stage, and I actually envisioned Crystal being a part of it too, and maybe some other big female artists, just kind of at an award show or at the Opry and performing it all together in this all of these harmony parts. I just feel like it is a song that I would love to perform at the Opry, to celebrate Dolly's birthday or anything like that. I'm really hopeful that might be something that is in the realm in the future. I mean, obviously, if Dolly just acknowledged the song, if I got to meet her, if we got to sing it on stage with her, I would, in any of those scenarios, I would absolutely melt and be the happiest little kid ever in a candy store. You know what I mean? It would be wonderful.
Do you think you could hold it together? Would you be able to hold it together?
I think I will I think I will hold it together because thankfully it's not a sad song. You know what I mean? So like,
Right, yeah.
I'll be able to hold it together because it's such a happy, positive song. So I will just be like beaming so hard that you might not even be able to see my eyes open, but like that's probably what it would look like.
Oh, I can hear that in your voice. That would be so amazing. Yeah, I envision actually something very similar, the way you described it. It's just some sort of maybe an honoring of her night, a legacy kind of celebration. And then in the background, you guys have been, chosen to do this. And maybe she knows, maybe she doesn't know. And you get up there, including Crystal. And I wanted to ask you about that too, because and I'll get to the question in a second, but so you guys get up there and you're doing your thing and she's like, oh, that's right, that song. And her, and then she just like impromptu gets up there. So that's my vision. So if we're throwing that out into the world, maybe this will happen. But so writing a song and then handing it over, because this is writing credits go to Crystal on this one. What is that like? Is generally that purposeful, where you're getting through a song and you're like, I think this would be better in this person's hands, and you kind of just
Are you talking about Who Am I Gonna Love? Like writing credits going to her?
Yes. I'm moving to that song, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that like? Is that something like you're giving up a baby, or is it something that generally people do on purpose, or what?
I do think it's something. I think it's something that people do on purpose to get out of your own way. Like, even though we've both been writing a very long time, when she texted me, Who Am I Gonna Love? She texted me the work tape of her and Thomas from their write, and I set them up to write together. I was like, yeah, this is my friend Crystal. Thomas, you guys got to meet each other and make sure you set up a write together. So I wasn't at the write at all. This was just particularly just them sitting down and writing. And then she texted me the work tape, and I heard it, and I could hear from a work tape, like all the production that it would be, like what the song will be at the end. Mm-hmm. I can kind of hear stuff like that. So I was like, this is it. Like, Thomas, it's a great song. Like, I feel like this is the song. Like, we should jump on this. And he just agreed with me. And then we immediately pretty much went into production.
Oh, that's
for
so
that,
cool.
For Who Am I Gonna Love? And I ended up getting my vocals done with a UK producer, Tyler Spicer, who was over in Nashville, happened to be over in Nashville, like around the time that I specifically needed vocals done. So I was like, can you help me out so I can get these vocals to Thomas so we can finish this song? And Thomas produced everything else. And we went back and forth. Like, you'd send it back to me, would make some tweaks, and then it was done.
Isn't that a cool world we live in, where things can happen like that, just across miles and miles and miles, and it's almost working side by side? I love that.
Yes, it is so cool. And like the collaboration piece of this job, I've been absolutely loving, which is why I'm on my third in a row duet era. And I have said a couple times, like, I don't really want to stop this era. Like, yes, I want to release music that I just released, but I'm really loving this duet stuff. So a little teaser, there might be more in the future.
Okay, good. Looking forward to it. Which to me begs the question. So I'm a like, okay, this is yours, this is mine kind of person. And I think maybe in kindergarten you learned how to share better than I did. But when I think of duet, I think of 50-50 and everything is this and that. And I just wonder, like, let's say you're doing a solo gig somewhere and you hadn't planned on singing that song, the duet song, but it comes up and someone's demanding it in the audience, like, we got to hear that. What are there any like rules, or, and pardon my naivety here, but can you, if you don't have your duet partner with you, can do it with anybody and it doesn't really matter, or once the song is out?
Yeah, like with Dolly, because it's a female duet. I've been doing it. I've been doing that song for the last month and a half, maybe 2 months now, at every single show. I told Kirstie I was going to go and perform it at every show to help promote the song.
Okay.
And she has sang it. I've seen video where she sang it with other artists. I helped her find our mutual friend Missy, who got up and sang with her, like the high harmonies. And so it's been really fun. I think there's no rules when it comes to that. It's the expansion of like, let's get this song out there. There's been some people now, going back to even Who Am I Gonna Love? There's a guy named Chris Bray out in Holmesfirth. I can't pronounce their cities and their accent. That has covered our song on TikTok, and he has a venue up there, like a country music venue, and so that's been just really cool. Like, obviously having somebody else cover your song like that was quite a moment, and Crystal and Thomas and I were all celebrating that moment together recently.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I was thinking of the question, so you've got Dabba Dolly. What if there was ever an homage to you or your friends, in song form, with references to your art and references to you?
Gosh.
How would that feel?
It would feel, I gotta shiver. Like, it would feel amazing. That would be like, that's, I think, the most form of, the highest form of flattery. Like, I was talking to someone the other day, and there is a Luke Combs tribute band in the UK now. Like, what? We don't even have Luke Combs tribute bands in the States, I don't think, like, and of course, like, they said Luke jumped on it and was all about supporting it, because I was like, of course he is. That's like what the highest form of flattery right there is. An artist is dedicating their craft to mimic and play all the songs that you've put out. That's just crazy and amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine hardly anything better. So who knows? Maybe that'll happen.
That'd be so fun.
I've seen lots of videos.
Yeah.
I saw one with Chad Smith, a drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they were on tour somewhere, maybe in the UK, and they just were like going local and going around to some places, and there was a band playing one of their songs, and he went there and said, "Hey, can I play some drums?" And it was a big thing. So who knows?
Awesome.
Yeah,
yes,
it happens.
Yes.
Well, I'd love to go coastal now and talk about Beaches Be Crazy a little bit, and maybe talk about how that song came about, what's happening with it. You've got some crazy outfits that I hadn't seen before.
I wish I could have packed that pinata onesie. I really wanted to. I just could not fit it in my one suitcase for 5 weeks. But I would have loved to wear it around London. I'm not going to lie. I think it's April 20th, that weekend, right after I get back. I think it's 4 or 5 days later, I will get to go to PCB and then come back to Nashville for like 4 or 5 days. And then I'll be going to Tampa and make my way down to Key West. So there's going to be plenty more to wear that onesie, to celebrate Beaches Be Crazy. That era is never going to be over. I absolutely love the ocean and the beach. And so this is my first official, like, by myself release to that, Parrot Head community, the Trop Rock community, the beach country. It's just been so much fun. And I didn't realize really until I was doing promotion for that song and trying to make content that I actually have a lot of videos that are kind of perfect for that song. And I was like, does that make me crazy? But it's just fun. It's fun. It definitely was like a little window where I learned, I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm definitely living it up. Like, I'm definitely having a great time at all these beaches, all these festivals on the beach. And which makes it easy because I have all this content then for the song.
Yeah, it's such a fun song. And in not contrast, because it's a little more of a serious way, but I caught the performance that you did in the stairwell while you were in the UK. It's, a cappella, and it was just the echo of the stairwell and everything. And to me, those are very alluring. And first, before I forget it, I was envisioning a kind of intimate stairwell tour of the different stairwells of buildings, famous buildings of all over the world. And, you can have limited audience because they're going to be above and below you and around you, but the echo does carry for a while. So talk about because I see performers do it all the time, what is that feeling of letting your voice just kind of fill that whole area, as opposed to, in contrast, the studio, where in my mind, to tell me if I'm wrong, it's just sort of like the sound it stops and it's just you and the echo. What's it like?
It definitely, like, one, I think that stairwell idea is like a great idea because there is something magical about having it fill the space. It feels almost like not limiting and kind of endless in what you can do. It's so raw and authentic too. And I think in the studio, it does feel more daunting to me only because going from a live, being primarily like a live performer, then going into the studio, when you're in the studio, that's like the stamp, like that is what it is. It will play over and over again. So I guess I put more pressure on it where like live, I found it's easier for me to just like open up and be in the moment and explore, you know, my creative side right away, where in the studio, I definitely have to take time to get to that space, whether it's 30, 35 minutes in of like singing the song, be like, okay, now I'm in the groove. Now I'm in the right headspace for this. I'm thinking about the right things. I'm singing it how I want it to be tracked. Like it takes me a little bit, you know, and I think there's a difference. There's some artists that record a lot. And so that's where they feel like they shine. And then there's some artists that do more of the live performing and they feel more comfortable there. And I would say I'm definitely more of the latter.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Now for you, since you mentioned it takes a while, maybe 35 minutes or whatever to get your groove in the studio. Is that something that the person behind the console expects from you, and there's that dialogue of they're waiting for you to stamp it? Or are you a little more forgiving, and when they come to you and say, well, we really like this, I think it should be good, and you're like, okay? Or do you feel like you really, you know yourself well enough that it's your say most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely put my say in whenever I can at a reasonable time and space. Like sometimes with vocals, you only have 2 hours or 3 hours to get the song done. So you just be mindful of like staying on track and staying on time. But for me, it is definitely about the emotion and the delivery of the song. So maybe something is like slightly out of time and needs to be, fixed, but the right emotion is there. I'm like, well, we got it. You need to like push that forward a little bit. So I'm coming in right on that downbeat or something. Like there's stuff I will wiggle and give into, but in a perfect world, I could sit there for, hours and hours and spend months, like just perfecting a thing. I think as an artist, these days with so much demand, on social media and being in person. I mean, just look at Lainey Wilson's schedule in general. You don't have the kind of time to sit and do that. You just don't have it.
That's interesting because there has to be a compromise, because and that begs the question. I really had this question for you because I watched the Silver video just recently, and you've been doing this for a long time, and that marked, I think, was that sort of your arrival to Nashville time when Silver came out?
Yeah, I mean, that was really when I was like starting to release songs on my debut record. I had 2 songs before that I was just like exploring the sound, like being a part of all the production, but I wasn't doing the record yet. So I was building, the confidence and planning for the record, but not starting to work on it yet. This Silver was the first song that I put out that was like, here is the era of my debut resume record.
Okay. And when you look at Kirstie from Silver and you pin yourself to that moment, and just thinking about the thing you just said about, if you are in the studio and had all the time you want and using your perfectionism, do you honor that era as it is what it was and contributed toward your career? Or would you go back? Would you ever rewrite some of your songs and redo them with a more modern perspective, things that you know now, or just kind of let that be as it is?
Yeah, I do think that's a great question. I am one of those people that wants to honor the timestamp, and that record for me, like the songs I chose, the instruments I chose, everything I chose I felt very good about. Like I feel very proud of that record still to this day. So, it's great. Like after not listening to it for a couple months and then putting it on my car, it makes me so happy and overjoyed again. So as long as I'm proud in that moment and I'm putting out something that is at the highest quality that I feel like I'm capable of, then I wouldn't go and redo it or rewrite it. I'm rarely an artist that goes and rewrites songs. In fact, songs that aren't even out that maybe someone would be like, maybe you should tweak this. And sometimes most of the time, I'm on the stance where like, no, that's what the song wanted to say. Like, that's what it needed to be. Like, that is what it's going to stay at. Obviously, if it's a tweak that like makes sense to me, then I'll do that. But if it's a tweak that's coming from somebody else, because I rarely sit down and will look at songs to rewrite them. I kind of just honor what it came to be and the timestamp of it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It makes me think of what you said earlier about I wouldn't call it a compromise, but the conscious decision that you make to, okay, we've got this pretty good and we have this time frame, but there are other commitments too. So we're gonna give it the stamp of approval. But you do have to get to that, all of you, both on both sides of the glass, we'll say, to get to that point where we love this and it's the best we can do right now, because you will look back on it and you don't want to have misgivings and feel anything about it. So, and I guess it takes a little longer for some songs than others, but you as an artist, when that moment is, I'm imagining, where it's like, yeah, this is it.
Yeah. When you start listening and you don't have anything to write down anymore, like nothing's sticking out, nothing's bothering you anymore. Like, the T's have been crossed, the I's have been dotted. Like you can hear every word you're saying. Like, but I have been definitely that artist is like, can you bring up that D on that word gold and silver? Can you, enhance my D a little bit so we can make sure that that's there? Like my notes could be as small as that. So once I run out of notes and I'm like, okay, yep, this is good. This is done. I'm happy with it. Let's go to print.
Nice.
And then they'll print it and then we'll send it to the mastering person or they'll master it.
And then it's on its way. How involved these days are you with visual design and album cover, so to speak? I know album's an old term, it seems, but just all that component. Are you sort of letting that go toward other people as you get occupied with touring the UK?
No. No, I go back and forth. I go back and forth until I'm happy. I'm very, very happy with the last two cover designs and that it took time to get there. But I definitely want the certain aspect of the visuals, and I want it to also relay the same feeling that I'm trying to convey in the music and have it go hand in hand visually. So yeah, definitely we're like, what are we going to be wearing? Okay, now we get these hats. Okay, now let's put a little heart on there too, just because it's extra bonus of like love and positivity. And it needs to it needs to be this pink. Can you expand the heart a little bigger? Like every little thing. I'm going back and forth until I feel like it's done. Yeah.
Do you see yourself being that involved all the way through your career? Is that something do you love that aspect of it too?
I kind of do. I like, it's tedious. It's not maybe the part that I love, but I don't see myself letting it go. Like I see myself always inserting my opinion and making sure that the products that I'm putting out is of the essence that I'm going for. And sometimes you can explain as much as you can to somebody, but they might be not on the same track. And if they're not, I'm definitely going to want to put my hand in and be a part of it.
Yeah. Oh, that makes total sense. Well, I'd love to move to Tied Down. We sort of had the Beaches Be Crazy theme and Tied Down. Speaking of water, talk about working with Mark and again, another duet, and anything that comes to mind about the genesis of that song.
Yeah, Mark is absolutely wonderful. He's just so laid back, but at the same time, he works his ass off and handles so many different things all at one time. And so it's quite impressive. Yeah, working with him, going in the studio, we went into 222 studios. And it was so much fun. Lee Turner has worked with Darius Rucker for over 8 years on keys and rhythm and kind of a utility guy. And so he has his own studio, and we were able to go in there, and I had known him in advance too. So it was kind of like a big reunion of getting all together, and the players crushed it. Mark and I went into the room and kind of just described like the essence of what we were going for, a little bit of this 70s rock feel mixed, all of it. And so they did such a great job, and it's been really fun to be able to perform the song live and just celebrate it with Mark. And it's still happening. I mean, we went number 1 on Radio Trop Rock for the month of February, and that song has just stayed around on these charts, just keeps going up. It kept going up, and when it made it number 1, it was awesome. And we were just together right before this tour in the UK. We were together at Music on the Bay in Tampa, a big festival, and he came out and got up in my full band set to sing that song with me, and it's just so much fun.
Do you have that happen often when you're I don't know if that was planned or not, but if you're somewhere that someone that you've worked with or that has this and that will just pop on stage, do you have one, is it a huge surprise and you have to go, oh wait, okay, or are you flexible enough to just they've got the mic? Because that to me sounds like true artistry, when you've got a component that gets added into what you weren't expecting. But of course you guys knew the song very well, but if it were someone else, what goes through your mind when that happens, I guess is my question.
I love the added pressure of things.
Okay.
So, I did a full band set here in the UK just a couple weeks ago, and I had never met the band in person. We showed up, we did sound check, and then we ran through, a couple things for the set, and we played an hour and some show, and I loved it. But that adds definitely a layer of pressure, and hoping that it will go well. And I also didn't stop there. I added another layer of pressure. I played Dolly for the first time full band. I also played another song that I've just been starting to try out. It was my first time ever singing it full way through, and also in public, just my first time singing that song. So I did it with a band that I didn't know. So I think adding those extra elements of let's just lean into what naturally comes out and lean into our artistry and let it happen. I find that very thrilling. So it's been fun for me. With Mark, we had that planned, and I also asked Crystal King to join me on stage. She did harmonies the entire set, and so obviously being able to do stuff like that with your friends and people that and trust that they're going to come up and do a good job as well. They know the songs, they prepared, and that just makes it extra fun. I just love sharing moments like that.
You are so much right where you need to be in what you're doing in your life, and I'm not prophetic or anything like that, but I can that to me sounds terrifying, because there's so many moving parts, and I'm a very methodical, planned out person, but you just, the puppet strings are going, and you guys are having I mean, of course there's a lot of professionalism involved in it, but there's so much open for something could go wrong. But I think credit to what you were saying about you love being on stage and you love that, the dynamic of it, and you can explore and whatever. I think because you're open to that range of possibility, all these things can happen. And
thank you for saying that. That's really overwhelmingly awesome to hear. I definitely I just remain very much open and in the moment where I feel out the room. And so even these last 3 days, I didn't make a set list whatsoever. I did a show that was 3 hours, and I had no set list in front of me. I just picked songs in the moment. every time. So I do stuff like that to myself all the time.
Oh, and if you're good at that and you feel it and you get the adrenaline rush, I can imagine that's it. Why wouldn't you do something that gives you that push? So I can understand the addiction in that sense, but oh my gosh, I couldn't possibly.
I guess I never want to get to a point where I'm up on stage and I'm just strumming and doing, okay, here's what I normally do. Like I've never ever let myself to be in that space, but I've definitely seen, I in all my time and in years, I've seen people get to that space, and I always want to keep it fresh and fun and interesting and new. And let's try this new song, let's just pull it up and see how it goes. I think I'm more, apt to put myself on the spot than maybe other people. I mean, I definitely know that, but.
So that begs the question.
You fake confidence,
Oh my gosh! So for the people off the stage that are handling you and working through this process with you, what's their headspace like?
Yeah, I think when I was in a band in the Midwest, we changed the set list all the time. Granted, it was written on a piece of paper, and some songs were blocked similarly. But every year we would probably learn 15 to 20 new songs and put it within this 4-hour set that we were doing full band wise. So they were kind of used to me changing up the set list sometimes, or being oh, today we're going to put those old songs in again. I think they just kind of got used to it. And I think when you start getting really comfortable, performing with somebody, you perform more than 5 times, you can have more flexibility in playing with what you're doing. And you generally know some of the moments that you want to hit in the show. But I think Crystal King and I have gotten very comfortable, so we don't have to really talk at all before we go on stage. We just kind of know the drill.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. I love that. I was looking at the title of your tour, Get Out from Under My Rock. Can you talk to me about you're laughing, about the origin of that? Because you don't sound like someone under a rock. I don't get it.
Well, thank you. It was definitely meant to make people laugh. And I just think I've never had to take the public train system. I've never been over to another country by myself. This is, just enough out of my comfort zone, but just enough near it that I felt like I could pull it off. And I wasn't nervous about this trip. I was more excited. I've done long form tours, 21 days, but never 5 weeks. One time I was in Florida for 9 weeks straight, but that was just basically at my aunt's house,
right?
Then driving to shows.
Kind of thing,
so this is a little different. I've obviously packed for longer times, but not 5 weeks. So this was definitely taking all of these things that I've grown into and putting it all together and can you do this? And had I told myself that I was going to be coming over here 3 years ago and just by myself with a guitar and playing a bunch of solo acoustic shows, I probably would have laughed. I would have been there's a lot of moments that have to happen before I get to that point. And so this is really a pinnacle adventure and tour for me, because I've literally never had to figure out public transportation by myself. And all these, there are times where I'm trying to get to a show and I have to go on 4 different, the tube and then this train and just figure, learn all the things, all the little nuances, all the little tricks about that. And I've definitely stepped outside of my general life where I just get in a car and go to a show. It's different.
That's fascinating to me.
I'm growing up.
Yes, you are, and I'm proud of you. That's it's the opposite of me. That stuff excites me, and it doesn't stress me really at all. I'm okay, well, we'll do this, and I can plan it out, and it tickles me a little bit that it's a little unnerving for you Whereas on the other side of the stage business and thousands of people staring at you while you play, that's what's daunting to me. So, it's, I guess,
I was most nervous about the trains. Like, I was most nervous about that. That was what I spent most of my worries prior to coming here about.
Just the fact that you would not get where you needed to go?
Yeah. And maybe I would just wouldn't arrive on time, or like I would mess up the trains and be like in Timbuktu and I'd have to figure it out, like, with bad internet somewhere. Like I just mentally prepared for the worst. And like, I've had moments like that. Like, it's definitely not an all glamorous trip. Like, I'm carrying a lot of weight around, and sometimes when I had my flight case, my big freight case, when I came over with, that was a lot of weight. I definitely had bruised up knees, carrying that stuff, trying to get it on and off trains and carrying it up the stairs because some places didn't have escalators or lifts.
Oh, goodness.
So it wasn't, and then rain involved. So you're getting all wet, and you're in your little raincoat, like trying to carry everything like that. I haven't put myself in scenarios like that. So like, this is good for me. Like, it was really good for me. And there were moments where a train shut down and I had to quick get to the surface so I could call an Uber, because the public transportation trains at that moment were not happening and I needed to get to a sound check. Like, so, and there was a time I arrived at a venue and I had 20 minutes to get ready and basically be on stage. So it's been a whole adventure.
Oh, it sounds like it, but you're wearing a smile. I can hear it. And you'll walk away from it all knowing a whole lot more.
Oh, yeah.
That's really cool.
I'm definitely stronger, and I'm more patient and more aware of my general surroundings as far as direction. I'm paying attention more. So it's been interesting to see me kind of like grow in those spaces where I've never really had to before.
Yeah, and who knows, during some of it, you might have summoned some of the Dolliness within you to get some wisdom for the moment. Because I'm sure she's had the same thing, in your business, you all put in the work there, and until you get the flight case being carried by somebody else and being transported on its own, and you're shuttled where you need to be, your feet are doing the work. So I applaud you for that.
That's so funny. Thank you.
Well, something a little totally different that's caught my attention is the Dolby Atmos connection with you. And I'm not an audiophile. I do love this quality sound and like listening to different kinds of music and the way they use the space. But can you talk to us about like how that happened and what that is doing for your music? And of course, it's parlaying into the Atmosphere podcast, which I'd love to mention too. Just go all Dolby in on me and tell me what's happening with that. Yes,
I feel like that's such a hot topic. As much as, country music here growing in the UK, like Dolby Atmos is this thing in the musical world that was pretty much everything that NAMM was about, was all of this new equipment coming out with this Atmos feature. And so it was so cool to be there with Enter the Atmosphere in January and out in Anaheim, California, and be, representing the podcast and learning about all these new features with these products that help cater to producers that are mixing in this 8D format. It's really like, it's not 2D anymore. They're starting to have 8D. It's available on Apple Music. It's available in cars. You can get an at-home system for Atmos for like $500. So there's definitely, it's becoming more of a general thing that people can get their hands on. And literally 80% of people are listening to Atmos. They just don't know it. They're just not aware of it at this point. So it's really cool to be a part of it on the cusp, like that's of this growth. The first movie that came out in Atmos was Frozen. The first song that came out in Atmos was Rocket Man. So just like now, all of these catalogs even back catalogs are being made in Atmos. So it's really cool to see, that being coming out and then hearing the record in like a whole new way. Dolly has a special release that is coming up in 2 weeks, which we are about to announce officially to have the Atmos mix come out. And of course, meeting people, even at Apple, at NAMM was really wild to be able to just hear their conversations around it and now be able to turn around and have a specific release with that. Beaches Be Crazy is also released in Atmos, and it really does give artists a leg up to release in that format, only because the payout is 5-1 right now. I'll be very candid about that. Like the streams and everything pays more, and it also it's a leg up because not everyone is doing it yet at this point. But the Apple Music is requiring the labels to release all the music now in both formats, the 2D and Dolby Atmos. So it's been really fun to be able to have music out like that. Beaches Be Crazy, like I said, has a special mix. We actually added an additional instrument. So if you listen on Apple Music, you can hear there's 3 moments where this additional like wooden kind of thing that makes, I don't know what it's called, but it's like, and it rattles.
Oh, like a rain
it's
stick
3 times in the mix. No, more like if you hit it and then it kind of like has this
a twanging sound, maybe.
Yeah, I cannot think of the name right now.
Yeah.
But it's there's 2 at the end and 1 in the middle, and there's just an added instrument for our special mix. So I would encourage you to listen to both songs when they're out in Atmos in your headphones on Apple Music. That's where you're going to hear it all.
Wow. Yeah, because I noticed, I think I mentioned to you that so a typical MP3 or wave, well, not wave as much, but the MP3 is between 5 and 10 megabytes, but then you get the Atmos version, and it's so much data heavier. And so I understand, like the more layers that are in there, the more highs and lows that are in there, it's going to weigh it down. Is that going to be something that streaming will adjust for? And I guess kind of like in the olden days when we first started getting streaming movies, where it would kind of queue a little bit before it would go. Is it going to be something that the online providers are going to have to sort of accommodate with something that's, if a song is more data? Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely more data. Like the file in general is massive compared to even a WAV file. It's a lot, and as far as the streaming platforms, it also costs the artist more money to just put that out. So we're going to see changes kind of in that regard, probably a lot, just because this is the newest technology, and as far as delivering music. But you do see even in theaters, like there's more where you can specifically pay to watch a movie in the Atmos, just like 3D. You're starting to see more of that. I think I went to the Avatar movie. The Avatar 2 was put out in Atmos, and you could go, pay extra to go watch that in Atmos and hear it that way. You could also pay extra to do both with Atmos and 3D. So it's just interesting what's popping up as far as making that available. Yeah. And we're going to see so much more of that.
Oh, and that's got to be so excited just to be on the cusp of it. Like you said, the very beginning. Wow. I'm envious.
Yeah, I feel like I've learned so much. I've learned even each individual, producer has their own preferences on how they mix. And in general, each genre has its own kind of staples on how, like where they put the guitar in the room. There's just so many more possibilities. So it's been really cool to be able to even just hear records way before they're even out, like the Judd's tribute record, or like Zach Top's record is a new artist in country music. Hearing those records done and in studio, not just my headphones, but like in the room way before they're even released, I feel definitely spoiled.
Oh, I bet you do. That's awesome. That's really good. And I don't know if this is getting very too technical or not, but you say going from 2D to 8D, what's happening in the music for that to be? And like you said, the distance of the instruments, but what will, if I'm a listener, what do I need to think of before I go into that experience? What I need to really try to listen for?
I think you don't have to just be open-minded. You don't have to think about anything. And rather than hearing it left and right, like where sometimes you would hear maybe a vocal just in your left ear that moves into your right ear, instead it's more like you would hear something, 3 or 4 inches in front of your right eye, and then it moves down towards the ground, and you can hear there's more space. There's more spaces. There's more choices for the producer to put things in certain spaces. Obviously, the Atmos is driven by AI. So depending on what you're listening on, it will factor that in, the capability of just the headphones that you're listening into, or the speakers, how many speakers are on the room. If you're missing speakers, it will factor all of that in. So obviously the best way right now to listen to Atmos mix is the standard setup that they do, which is like I don't want to be wrong, but it's like a 3, 2, 3, and then 4 on the top, as far as speakers in the room. But because it's AI generated, it will adjust depending on what speakers you listen to. And that's like the biggest difference between Atmos and 2D. It's just, it has all that capability, but it will adjust depending on what you're listening on.
Do you think that major concert venues will get in on this? And
they're already starting. Oh my
really?
Gosh, it's so crazy. Oh yes, and they're starting to record orchestras in Atmos with all these special microphones. They're starting to keep this in mind with just on the front end of how they're recording music. At concerts, people can put special headphones on. They can, pay extra to have special headphones and hear the concert as if they were on stage with the artist. It's kind of crazy what the technology is doing right now. There's a lot of movement happening, which is why it's such a prominent, subject in like the people who are creating the music.
That's amazing. Wow, so cool.
So yeah, it's good you're thinking of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm geeking out a little bit here. Speaking of geeking out, I know you've got a really strong connection with Breedlove. I actually joined their mailing list after talking to you last year, and so I get information on all that's coming out. It's how's that going? Is it when you're traveling? I know that with a small size, it's much easier to handle. Are you coming back with them and helping them develop products, or where are you on the journey with Breedlove?
Yeah, I haven't quite done that yet. I actually upgraded. I have that small mini. It's the house. I am using a full-sized, deep, dark blue guitar Breedlove at the moment, and that is my go-to. And so I actually bought a case specifically to bring that over to the UK to have my main guitar, that Breedlove, with me for these 5 weeks, because there's nothing like, playing your own guitar is a lot more comfortable than anything else, and especially your go-to. So it's been wonderful. It's been so good to me. It stays in tune. It's literally my ride or die right now, and I just feel so comfortable when I have that guitar in my hands. So it's been perfect for me. I love the body shape, where it's like that cutaway and on both sides, and then also the neck, the way the neck is a little bit smaller. It's not quite as wide as a Martin neck, but still has elements in the sound of a Martin, where there's that low end kind of like comforting harp kind of tones. That's my jam. That is definitely for me. So I'm very proud of that guitar, and I'm very proud to be able to have it on this tour and be taking them as I have these awesome performance shots from random photographers all over London.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And is Breedlove, are they a U.S. based company, or where are they based out of?
They're based out of Washington. They have Washington State. in like the Seattle area.
Okay. So yeah, you're getting, so I imagine you get some questions maybe while you're over there. Hey, what kind of guitar is that? And you get to talk it up a little bit. That's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And just educate anyone who hasn't heard of it, because Breedlove is known to be like, top 5 acoustic guitars. And so, maybe people who haven't dove in enough and maybe just know like the top 2. So they're like, oh, I'll check that out. It's cool.
Yeah, and then to see one, there's nothing like seeing a guitar being used live, because that just draws you in like, okay, this is what it does sound like. You can actually hear it instead of seeing, a billboard or whatever. Well, that's great. So let's look in the future. I'll always love to look at the future at the end here. And what do you see? You said that you did, 3 years ago you couldn't have imagined touring the UK on your own and playing your own music and whatever. So clearly anything's possible. So what would you love to see?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to perform Dolly at the Opry. That would be is definitely something I am looking for, trying to manifest in the future. I want to go out to California and Canada at some point and do some winery tours. I know that's under the horizon of what I want to take on, and I've never been to Canada yet. Of course, I want to come over again to the UK and just be an artist that comes over once a year. So just manifesting that, growing the relationships, especially after this tour, like just taking notes, meeting people, all the things, shaking hands. And that's been really fun to just continue to put the work in to grow, to be that Sarah, type of Sarah Darling or Cam that can do that and come over every year, and there's a demand for it.
Right. Right.
I still have on the horizon that I'd love to go to Australia and New Zealand at one point. I also have goals to do more in the hosting world and just work with other brands, work with a brand based out of Nashville, just kind of putting my name out there and seeing what's going to come to fruition. But that would be so fun.
I think all of it sounds, including what you started with, I think all of it sounds likely, not just possibly, but I think it sounds likely. I think I told you last time, I tell many people, if you put things out into the world enough and it's positive, let's just push the negativity away because we don't need any of that, right? But the positive vibes, it could easily happen. So I'm putting it out here that Dolly is going to find you somehow, and that's going to happen. And all those travel endeavors, those sound great too. So we will make it happen together.
Yay. Thank you so much. We are certainly tagging Dolly enough that I think it's inevitable at one of these moments that she'll see or hear the song. So that would be so cool. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're in the midst of a tour, and with the time change being in the UK right now, it took some coordination from both of us, but I think it's, I love catching up, and congratulations on being the first repeat guest. I couldn't think of anyone better.
Yay. So, that's right.
Yeah. So we can, we've now paved the way for other artists to come back and catch up. I always say that. And so to you, I say, please, accomplish your goals, get some things taken care of on that list that we just named, and then please come back and fill us in. We want to hear again.
Oh my gosh, of course. It is an honor to be your first repeated guest. And I had literally such a wonderful time the first time that it was just a no-brainer for me to reach out, and having all this stuff going on just to revisit with you and celebrate all these things. And you're, of course, always so positive and very professional. So thank you so much for having me on here, Jay. I really appreciate the space and the opportunity to discuss and celebrate all this stuff.
Absolutely. My pleasure. You're a wonderful guest, and I wish all the best for you. And please stay in touch.
Yep, will do. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Good luck with the rest of the tour.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Feeling down not as strong. So I put my hair up high. It's a special fit for a day like this. All you gotta do is add some shine. A little dab of Dolly is good for everyone. When this world's waiting on me, I put her records on. Turn up the queen of country, yeah, she gets me in every song. Little dab of Dolly is good for everyone. Don't get too busy in a 9 to 5 that you forget to make a life. Dark clouds will come, but soon they'll be gone, leaving a rainbow on the other side. A little dab of Dolly is good for everyone. When this world's waiting on me, I put her records on. Turn up the queen of country, yeah, she gets me in every song. Little dab of Dolly is good for everyone. She sings with some rock and roll. They're on a big statue on the corner of Music Road. No matter where you come from, when you're feeling mixed up and wrong, she has a way of helping us all get along. Little dab of Dolly is good for